You're tuning into Black and White Sports on YouTube. The no-holds-barred truth on sports. The main event starts now.
All right, Black and White Sports supporters, we're going to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. Max Crosby has come out, made some comments, and now he has gotten a little bit more, I guess you could say, vocal in his support for Antonio Pierce. But his wording on this tells you that, if Antonio Pierce doesn't get the job, and there was just a report saying that Crosby and Davante Adams would ultimately sign off on Harbaugh if Harbaugh ends up being the guy. But these comments might worry you as a Raiders fan. Could there be a fracture? Now, of course, you guys know I'm a Harbaugh fan. I'm a Michigan fan, so today it's a good day, right? But I do think it's time for Harbaugh to go back to the NFL and try to get that Super Bowl trophy. And then he really puts himself in elite company of guys that's got national championship along with a Super Bowl trophy, and there's not many there, right? But Mark Davis, I think if you give Mark Davis true serum, he wants Jim Harbaugh. That's his guy. He just won a national championship. We talked about there's a business aspect to Harbaugh. There's a business aspect with Belichick. There's not a business aspect to Antonio Pierce. All right? And Vegas, the Raiders moved to Vegas, and the Raiders want tourism tickets sold. All right? They want people that when they come into town, they go, we need to come to a Raiders game. We need to go see Jim Harbaugh. Or maybe they were a Stanford fan or a Niners fan, right? Or a Raiders fan. Whoever, Mark Davis don't care about that. He wants that ticket purchased, right? That's part of it. And you're getting a hell of a football coach, a guy that has literally won everywhere. And the thought process was, well, Max Crosby and Davante Adams would just take a look at Harbaugh's resume versus Antonio Pierce, and let's be honest, they're not even close. It's almost no resume outside of the player part, but Harbaugh's got that too. And Harbaugh's a former Raider. He already coached there. And so it's things with the Raiders in this coaching situation is going to get so interesting. It already is interesting. The Athletic, right here, this came out. If it was up to Raiders defensive end Max Crosby, interim head coach Antonio Pierce would be back with Las Vegas. This is what he said. This was after the victory. If you look at it, it's like, damn, I wish we'd have had this for the full season, and we have the opportunity to do that now. So why in the F would you ruin that? So you can tell guys are starting to get a little, Max Crosby's starting to get a little irritated with the fact that there's even a big process here. But I would assume Mark Davis, and I think just by league rules, he's going to have to interview 5 or 6 guys probably. All right. But it's clear it's Harbaugh or it's Antonio Pierce. I think John Gruden's out, and I think John Gruden's about to align himself with the Saints organization at this point anyway. So Mark Davis said this last month. Davis said he doesn't want to mislead anyone during the interview process. So it will be interesting to see how things play out over the next few weeks if Pierce and Harbaugh really are at the top of the owner's list. Quote, it's tough because I do have Antonio and Champ in those positions. I'd like for them to get the job. So if I start to feel like that's definitely the way I'm going to go, which I'm not there, then I don't want to mislead people in the interview process. So it's going to be a really interesting dynamic in trying to keep an open mind to the potential hirings. Okay, and it goes on to bring up David Shaw and all this. I don't think that's going to get real serious. John Gruden, like I said, I did the video this morning. The Saints look like they're going to hire him as what they're calling a senior offensive assistant, which I believe will eventually lead to him either being the head coach or being the OC and then the head coach. or both. The Saints can go, hey, we can hire John Gruden. We don't need an OC. He'll call the plays. All right, so there's that. I just think it's Gruden's starting to head in the direction of the Saints. He sees an opportunity. Now, Jordan Schultz of Bleacher Report came out and made these comments right prior to last night's national championship game.
Still coaching at Michigan. He has the biggest game of his life tonight in the national championship. But it's my understanding that Harbaugh has made it very clear internally that he wants to leave college and go back to the NFL, where obviously he's already had a tremendous amount of success coaching the 49ers. Now let's start with the Raiders. Owner Mark Davis really likes the interim head coach, Antonio Pierce. There's a lot of synergy there, and I think what Pierce has done a great job at in a short period of time since taking over for Josh McDaniels is galvanizing what was really a morbid locker room and turning that locker room into a happy, positive place. They won some games. The defense really showed some promise, and I think Antonio Pierce, maybe most importantly, has the support of the locker room, not only the locker room, but real stars, the Max Crosbys and Devontae Adams of the world, not to mention other premier defensive players. So Antonio Pierce is going to get a great shot. And as I told you last week, the Raiders have to do their due diligence. There is going to be a process in which they're interviewing several coaches. They couldn't just say, we love Antonio Pierce, he's our guy. They have to interview other coaches, which they will. But it's my understanding that Mark Davis really, really likes the idea of potentially bringing in Jim Harbaugh, big-name coach, big-name prestige franchise, the silver and black. And obviously, this is probably the most important hire that Mark Davis has had. And one of the really key components to this is whether or not Harbaugh's going to be able to pick his own GM, how important that is to him, how much control, because really money isn't going to be a factor. You're going to talk, when you're talking about Harbaugh going to the NFL, that means he's turning down what was a $125 million extension from Michigan. He's going to get the type of money that he wants. Money's not really going to be an issue. We've already heard John Spanos, for example, the president of football ops for the Chargers, say, we're going to spend the money regardless. It's not going to become a factor for us. If it's the Raiders, money won't be an issue. If it's the Commanders for Harbaugh, money won't be an issue. But let me be very clear that the Raiders, to me, are really in a two-horse race at this point between Antonio Pierce and Jim Harbaugh. There's a lot of love internally for Pierce, but Mark Davis really likes the idea of having a big-time name, big-time hire for his prestige franchise. Someone like Jim Harbaugh would really move the needle.
Okay, so, and you can even see there in that chat popping up, Raiders fans, keep Antonio Pierce, keep Antonio Pierce. But is that really the best thing to do from a football perspective? Again, if you lose Harbaugh to the Chargers, you're playing Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Jim Harbaugh. Uh-oh. I mean, that's a murderer's row, and people can try to clown Sean Payton all they want. They were a dumpster fire last year, the Broncos, and they won 3 more games just that quick in a still somewhat chaotic roster situation. Sean Payton's going to have that team competing to win 10 or 11 games probably next season. All right? Andy Reid's going to reload with wide receivers, and you're going to have a guy that can go toe-to-toe. Now, if I'm being honest, my gut feeling tells me that Harbaugh really wants the Chargers job, though. Mark Davis wants Jim Harbaugh, I think. The fan base and the players want Antonio Pierce. I think Mark Davis wants Jim Harbaugh. I think Jim Harbaugh, although I think he would be open to the Raiders job because obviously he used to be a coach there and there is a connection for him, I think he kind of wants the Chargers job, but the Chargers job is going to be a big deal. I think they'd like to have Harbaugh, but I think they're open to Belichick. And then the big wild card in all this is that report that came out that Mark Davis wants to sit down and have a meeting with Bill Belichick. But I don't know. Belichick wanting to, or saying he would relinquish the personnel decisions in New England, I think is a huge deal. I think there's a chance. Word has it Bill O'Brien's already coming back. I mean, that tells you that, what are the Crafts doing exactly? I don't know. This ain't a Patriots video, but that's getting a little strange, There's some things out there about the idea that Belichick's kids, who are obviously working for him, don't want to move their families. So Belichick may be really trying to sell himself to get that job back with the Patriots. And the Cowboys, well, they're a big wild card with Belichick, a very big one. So I suspect a lot of Raiders fans are going to be like, it's got to be Antonio Pierce. Look, if your backup plan, your fallback plan, I think is Antonio Pierce, that's not so bad. All right? And I think a lot of fans would be happy about that. I think your defensive line, and I think your defense will be good. But it's an offensive league now, and the one thing we know about Harbaugh is he can build a great offensive and defensive line, and you'll be able to run the ball. And he can scheme like nobody's business. It will, just like with Antonio Pierce, it will be a black and blue bruising team with Harbaugh. It's going to be very old school, I think, with either one of these coaches. And if you're a Raiders fan, that's sort of what you want it to be, right? You want to be, somebody brought up earlier with the Raiders, you want to be the bully. Pierce or Harbaugh are going to build a bully. Tell me what you think. Peace. I'm out. Till next time.
Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to tune in next time on Black and White Sports.